After 12 years of marriage, I never expected to find myself staring at my phone in the middle of my shift at the boutique I managed, watching my life fall apart in a single text message. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold my phone as I quickly checked our joint account. $67,432 gone, just like that. But what he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. This is the story of how I froze every card before morning and rebuilt my life while he lost everything he thought he'd taken from me. John and I met in college. I was studying business management while working 2 jobs to pay my tuition, and he was the charming economics major from a wealthy family who swept me off my feet. Everyone thought we were perfect together, the hardworking girl with big dreams and the ambitious boy with connections. We married right after graduation, and I put my entrepreneurial plans on hold to support his career in finance. He promised we'd build our empire together, that my time would come after he established himself. I believed him completely, merging our finances, our dreams, and our futures into what I thought was an unbreakable partnership. The boutique job was supposed to be temporary, just something to keep me busy while John climbed the corporate ladder. But over the years, I fell in love with retail management, with helping women find clothes that made them feel beautiful and confident. I excelled at it, turning a struggling store into the most profitable location in our district. My boss started mentioning future opportunities, district management positions, maybe even a chance to develop my own line someday. John dismissed it all as cute, just a hobby until we started a family. He'd pat my head and say things like, "It's adorable how seriously you take folding sweaters," never once acknowledging that I was managing staff, inventory, and had increased profits by 37% in my first year. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The way his eyes would glaze over when I talked about work, how he'd interrupt me to talk about his day, his gradual discouragement whenever I mentioned taking business courses again. When his company offered him a promotion that would require relocation, he accepted without discussing it with me first. "You can find another little shop to play store with," he said, as if my career meant nothing. That night, I created my own separate bank account, just as a precaution. I told myself I was being paranoid, but something inside me whispered that I needed to protect myself. I only transferred $5,000, small enough that he wouldn't notice from our joint savings, but enough to give me options if I needed them. What I didn't tell John was that the regional director had approached me about managing my own store. Not just any store, but a flagship location they were planning to open in the same city. He was so eager to leave. The salary was double what I was making, with profit sharing and creative input on merchandising. When I mentioned the opportunity at dinner, waiting until he'd had his favorite meal and was in a good mood, he laughed and said, "Honey, you don't want that kind of pressure. Besides, we're moving for my real job, remember?" His dismissal stung, but instead of arguing, I smiled and changed the subject. That weekend, while he was golfing with clients, I called the regional director back and asked if the position could be kept open for 6 more weeks. "I'm working through some personal matters," I explained. She understood immediately, more than I realized at the time. 3 years into our marriage, John started working longer hours and coming home smelling of expensive perfume. When I asked about it, he'd tell me I was being paranoid, or that I was smelling his female colleagues' perfume from meetings. I started noticing small withdrawals from our joint account. Nothing major, just $200 here, $300 there, always from restaurants or hotels I'd never been to. Whenever I questioned these expenses, he'd have a ready explanation: client dinners, networking events, or conference bookings. I wanted to believe him, but the knot in my stomach grew tighter with each passing month. I started taking screenshots of our bank statements, creating a digital record of these transactions along with dates and his explanations. By our 5th anniversary, I had become a master at pretending everything was fine. I smiled through dinner parties with his colleagues, nodding politely as he interrupted me or made jokes at my expense. "My wife in her little shop," he'd say, raising his glass while everyone chuckled. Behind my practiced smile, I was making mental notes of names, connections, and business opportunities. One of his colleagues' wives owned a successful online boutique and had been looking to expand to physical locations. We exchanged numbers under the guise of planning a surprise party for John. In reality, we met for coffee the following week to discuss potential business partnerships. She was impressed by my retail management experience and growth strategies. Our marriage counselor, whom John reluctantly agreed to see after I found lipstick on his collar, suggested we maintain transparency with our finances as a trust-building exercise. John agreed, perhaps believing I was too naive to understand the complexity of our accounts. What he didn't realize was that I'd been taking night classes in financial management, using money from my separate account to pay for them. The knowledge I gained allowed me to understand exactly what he was doing, how he was moving money between accounts, making investments without consulting me, and gradually separating our financial lives while maintaining the appearance of unity. Instead of confronting him, I began duplicating his strategy, building my own safety net one paycheck at a time. On our 7th anniversary, John surprised me with a beautiful diamond bracelet. "You deserve something special," he said, kissing my forehead as he clasped it around my wrist. That same night, I discovered he'd opened a separate investment account in his name only, funded with money from our joint savings, almost $35,000. The bracelet had cost $4,200, according to the receipt I found in his suit pocket. It felt less like a gift and more like a distraction, a shiny object to keep me from noticing what he was really doing. Instead of confronting him, I took the bracelet to be appraised and insured the next day, adding it to my growing list of assets. The jeweler mentioned it was a good investment piece that would likely appreciate in value, information I filed away for future reference. When John's father passed away unexpectedly, leaving him a substantial inheritance, I watched something shift in my husband's demeanor. He became more controlling with our finances, insisting that I consult him before making any purchase over $100, even for household necessities. Meanwhile, he bought himself a new luxury car without discussion. "It's my inheritance," he said when I questioned the double standard. "Besides, I'm the one making the real money here." That night, after he fell asleep, I went through his email on the shared family computer, something I'd never done before. What I found made my blood run cold. Correspondence with a real estate agent about purchasing a beachfront condo in his name only, using his inheritance as a down payment. The closing date was set for the following month. The next morning, I called my mother, asking if I could store some of my personal belongings at her house. Family heirlooms, important documents, and irreplaceable photos. "Just doing some spring cleaning," I explained, not wanting to worry her with the truth. She agreed without question, and that weekend while John was on a business trip, which I now suspected was actually a visit to his new secret property, I carefully packed my most precious items and valuable jewelry, including the anniversary bracelet. I also made copies of all our important financial documents, insurance policies, and tax returns from the past 7 years. Something told me I would need them, though I wasn't yet ready to admit to myself what was happening to my marriage. The boutique I managed was thriving, and my regional director was increasingly impressed with my performance. She offered me a position on the company's merchandising committee, which would involve quarterly trips to New York and Paris to select inventory for the upcoming seasons. When I told John about the opportunity, his reaction was immediate and harsh. "You can't possibly manage that with your other responsibilities," he said dismissively. "What responsibilities?" I asked, genuinely confused. We had no children, and I managed our household efficiently despite working full-time. His response chilled me. "The responsibilities you'll have once we start our family." We hadn't discussed having children in years. In fact, he had been the one to suggest waiting. Now suddenly, he was using a non-existent family as a reason to hold me back professionally. I accepted the merchandising position without telling John, arranging for my assistant manager to cover the store during my absences. During my first trip to New York, I met with a financial advisor recommended by one of our vendors, someone completely unconnected to John's network. I laid out my situation carefully, without revealing too many personal details, my concerns about joint assets, my suspicions about hidden accounts, my need for independence. She listened without judgment, then helped me develop a strategy to protect myself financially, while I decided what to do about my marriage. Build your own foundation, she advised. Whether you stay or go, you'll never regret having financial security of your own. That night, I opened a new account at a different bank and transferred another $10,000 from my paychecks over the next few months. As our 10th anniversary approached, John became increasingly distant and critical. Nothing I did seemed good enough. The house wasn't clean enough. Dinner wasn't prepared to his liking. My clothes weren't sophisticated enough for his new executive position. At the same time, his business trips became more frequent, often coinciding with weekends and holidays. The final straw came when he missed Christmas Eve to close an important deal, but posted a beach photo on his Instagram account, forgetting that I could see it. The location tag showed the same beach town where I discovered he'd purchased property. Instead of confronting him, I took a photo of the screen and sent it to my personal email, then continued preparing our holiday meal as if nothing had happened. January brought performance reviews at work, and I received the highest possible rating along with a substantial bonus. The regional director took me to lunch afterward, confiding that the company was planning to expand significantly in the coming year. "We want you to head up the new flagship store," she said. "It would mean relocating, but the compensation package is exceptional." When I asked about the location, she named the city that had been my dream destination since college, a fashion hub where I'd always imagined building my career before settling for John's choices. The starting salary was nearly double what I was currently making, with performance bonuses that could increase it by another 50%. For the first time in years, I felt a flutter of genuine excitement about my future. That evening, John announced he'd been offered a position with a competitor firm, one that would require relocation to the same city my company was expanding into. My heart raced as he explained the details, wondering if this could be a sign that our marriage might work after all. "It's the opportunity of a lifetime," he said, refilling his wine glass. "I've already accepted. We'll move next month." No discussion, no consideration of my career or preferences. When I mentioned my own opportunity, his expression darkened. "Don't be ridiculous," he said. "This is about my career, not your little hobby. You can find another shop to manage anywhere." In that moment, something inside me hardened. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and made a decision. I would move to that city, but whether it would be with John remained to be seen. The signs were becoming impossible to ignore. Credit card statements showed hotel charges in our own city on nights he claimed to be working late. Text messages appeared on his phone from someone named Mike P. that were clearly not from a man. Small withdrawals continued from our joint account, and a review of our investment portfolio showed several assets had been sold without my knowledge. I began preparing in earnest, updating my resume, reaching out to former colleagues, researching apartments in my target city. I accepted the promotion and agreed to relocate, but asked my company to keep the information confidential for the time being, citing personal circumstances. My regional director squeezed my hand knowingly. "Take all the time you need," she said. "The position is yours when you're ready." The night before everything changed, John and I had dinner at his favorite restaurant, an expensive steakhouse where he was known by name. He was unusually attentive, complimenting my appearance and ordering my favorite wine. For a moment, I almost believed I'd been imagining things. Then he started talking about the move, about how he'd found the perfect house for us, more than we could really afford, but he was confident in his new salary. "I've already put down a deposit," he said casually. "We'll need to liquidate some of our investments for the down payment." My investments, the ones I'd been carefully growing for years while he undermined my career. I smiled and clinked glasses with him, already calculating how much I could salvage once I gained access to the accounts. That night, John received a call and stepped outside to take it. I could see him through the bedroom window, pacing in the garden, his expression animated. When he returned, he claimed it was his new boss discussing relocation details. But at 11 p.m., I pretended to believe him, turning over in bed and feigning sleep as he showered and slipped under the covers. Once his breathing deepened into the rhythm of sleep, I carefully got up and checked his phone. The call had come from Mike P., and the text messages made it clear that Mike was actually Michelle, his real estate agent who was helping him purchase property. The messages referenced our place, and making sure your wife doesn't find out before everything is finalized. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made a comprehensive list of all our accounts, investments, and assets. I checked and double-checked the balances, took screenshots of everything, and emailed them to my personal account. Something told me I needed to be prepared, though I wasn't yet sure for what. In the morning, John left for work with a kiss on my cheek, telling me he'd be home late due to a client dinner. I nodded and wished him a good day, fighting to keep my voice steady. After he left, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I spent the day gathering important documents, contacting my separate bank to verify balances, and calling 3 different divorce attorneys to schedule consultations. By afternoon, I felt strangely calm, as if I'd been preparing for this moment my entire marriage. The text came during my shift the next day, a busy Saturday when we typically had the highest sales volume of the week. I was helping a customer find the perfect outfit for a job interview when my phone buzzed. The message was brief and cold. "I'm leaving you. I emptied our account. Have fun." My hands trembled as I excused myself and checked our joint account. The entire balance, $67,432, had been transferred out that morning. I felt the blood drain from my face, but surprisingly no tears came. Instead, a strange cold clarity washed over me. I finished helping my customer, rang up her purchase with a smile, and then walked calmly to the back office. I had prepared for this possibility without even knowing it. Now it was time to act, not react. I picked up my phone and made the first of many calls that would change everything. The first call was to the bank where we held our joint accounts. "I need to report suspicious activity and possible fraud," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I explained that large transfers had been made without my knowledge or consent. The account was frozen immediately, and I was advised to come to the branch with identification as soon as possible. My next call was to our credit card companies, all 3 of them. I reported the cards as compromised and requested immediate freezes and replacement cards to be sent to my mother's address. The customer service representative asked if I wanted to add a verbal password to my accounts for additional security. "Absolutely," I said, choosing a word John would never guess. The name of the business I'd dreamed of starting before putting my ambitions on hold for his career. By the time my shift ended, I had spoken with all our financial institutions, our investment broker, and even the utility companies for our home. I had reported suspicious activity, changed passwords, added security questions, and essentially locked John out of every account that had my name on it. I hadn't yet decided if this was a separation or a divorce. But either way, I wasn't going to let him drain everything I had worked for. As I drove to my mother's house, where I'd arranged to stay, while John was on a business trip, I felt a strange mixture of grief and exhilaration. The life I had known was over, but perhaps the life I was meant to have was just beginning. I thought about the separate accounts I'd established, the career opportunity waiting for me, and the newfound strength I'd discovered within myself. The next morning brought a flurry of angry texts and voicemails from John, demanding to know what I'd done. "You can't do this," he fumed in one message. "You'll never survive without me." His threats only strengthened my resolve. I didn't respond immediately, instead meeting with the first of 3 divorce attorneys I'd scheduled consultations with. She listened to my story, reviewed the financial documents I'd gathered, and nodded approvingly at the steps I'd already taken. "You've done exactly what I would have advised," she said. "Most people aren't this prepared." When I told her about the job opportunity waiting for me in the same city John was planning to move to, she smiled. "Interesting coincidence," she remarked. "Have you considered taking the position? It would certainly make your financial situation more secure during the proceedings." After our meeting, I finally responded to John with a single text. "I know about the condo, about Michelle, and about the accounts you've hidden. I've spoken with a lawyer. Ball's in your court." Within minutes, my phone rang. "John, calling from an unfamiliar number since I'd blocked his regular one. Against my better judgment, I answered. His tone had changed completely. Gone was the anger, replaced by a pleading gentleness I hadn't heard in years. "We can work this out," he said. "I made a mistake, but we have history together. Think about all we've built." I almost laughed at the irony. What had we built, really? A marriage where he systematically undermined my confidence and career while planning his escape? "You're right," I replied, surprising both of us. "We do have history, and now we're both going to learn from it." I ended the call before he could respond, feeling stronger than I had in years. The divorce proceedings were less contentious than I'd expected. Once John realized I had documentation of his financial deception and potential affairs, he became remarkably cooperative. The attorney I ultimately hired specialized in high-conflict divorces and complex financial situations. Her fees were steep, but worth every penny. She helped me negotiate a settlement that included half of the value of the secret beachfront condo, restoration of my portion of our joint savings, and a fair division of our other assets. "He's agreeing too easily," my attorney observed during one meeting. "He thinks you'll struggle financially and come crawling back." I smiled, thinking of the job offer letter sitting in my personal email account, the one John knew nothing about. "He's in for a surprise," I replied, feeling a flutter of satisfaction. During the weeks of legal negotiations, I focused on rebuilding my life. I accepted the promotion and relocation offer, finding an apartment in the same upscale neighborhood where John had purchased his new home. Just 3 blocks away, in fact. I didn't choose the location to antagonize him. It was simply the most convenient area for my new position. My new salary was substantial enough to afford the rent comfortably, and the signing bonus covered moving expenses and new furniture. When I shared my plans with my mother, she hugged me tightly. "I've been waiting years for you to become yourself again," she whispered. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd set aside in my marriage until I started reclaiming those discarded pieces. Each decision I made without considering John's approval felt like recovering a lost part of my identity. The day I signed the lease on my new apartment was the same day our divorce was finalized. I celebrated by taking myself to dinner at an elegant restaurant overlooking the city, the kind of place where John would have done all the ordering and talking while I sat quietly beside him. This time, I chose my own meal, selected a wine based on my preferences rather than price or prestige, and engaged in pleasant conversation with my server. As I enjoyed my dessert, something chocolate and decadent that John would have deemed too fattening, I received an email from my new boss, confirming my start date and expressing excitement about my relocation. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine sense of anticipation about my future. Not anxiety or dread, but true excitement about the possibilities that awaited me. 2 weeks before my planned move, I ran into John at our local grocery store. He looked tired and drawn, his designer clothes slightly rumpled. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the aisle of produce creating a narrow barrier between our new separate lives. "I heard you're moving to Boston," he finally said, his tone a mixture of accusation and disbelief. News traveled fast in our social circle. "Yes," I replied simply. "New job. I start next month." His expression flickered between confusion and something that looked almost like respect. "With your boutique?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'm the new regional director for the Eastern Division. I'll be overseeing 7 stores, including the new flagship location." I didn't add that my salary would likely match or exceed his within 2 years. I didn't need to. For the first time in our relationship, he was seeing me clearly, not as his accessory or support system, but as a capable, ambitious professional in my own right. "Congratulations," he said after a long pause. "You deserve it." As I walked away, I realized those were the first sincere words he'd spoken to me in years. My new life took shape faster than I expected. The regional director position challenged and energized me, utilizing skills I'd been developing for years without proper recognition. Within my first quarter, I'd implemented changes that increased sales across all 7 stores by 12%, earning me a commendation from the company CEO. My apartment, while smaller than the house I'd shared with John, felt more like home than any place I'd lived before. I decorated it exactly to my taste, without compromising for anyone else's preferences. Friends from my old life were surprised by the transformation, not just in my circumstances, but in my demeanor. "You're glowing," my former assistant manager commented when she visited. "Like you finally stepped into your full power." I hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. Without John's constant undermining, I was discovering strengths I hadn't known I possessed. The irony wasn't lost on me when I learned that John's new position hadn't worked out as planned. Office gossip filtered back through mutual connections. He'd been passed over for a promotion he'd been assured was his, and the company was undergoing restructuring that left his department vulnerable. I felt no satisfaction in his professional struggles, just a renewed appreciation for my own careful planning and hard work. When a mutual friend mentioned awkwardly that John had been seen around town with Michelle, the real estate agent, I simply nodded and changed the subject. Their relationship, whether business, personal, or both, was no longer my concern. My energy was better spent on my own growth and the genuine friendships I was cultivating in my new community. 6 months after my move, I received an unexpected email from John. "Seeing your name in Business Weekly was a surprise," he wrote. "Congratulations on the expansion project." I hadn't realized the business publication had featured our company's aggressive growth strategy, with a brief mention of my role in the Eastern markets. The tone of his message seemed sincere, without the underlying resentment or condescension I'd grown accustomed to. I replied with a brief but polite thank you, resisting the urge to point out that the little hobby he'd dismissed for years was now receiving industry recognition. His response came quickly. "I owe you an apology. For many things. Could we meet for coffee next time I'm in Boston?" I sat with the request for several days before declining gently. "I appreciate the thought," I wrote, "but I'm focusing on moving forward right now. Some chapters are better left closed, even when the ending isn't what we'd once imagined." The first anniversary of that life-changing text message found me in Paris, representing our company at an international retail conference. As I stood on the balcony of my hotel room, watching the city lights blink on at dusk, I reflected on the year's journey. The pain of betrayal had faded, replaced by an unexpected gratitude for the push it had given me to reclaim my dreams. My phone buzzed with a message from my team back in Boston. A customer had special ordered an outfit for a job interview and wanted to thank me personally for the styling advice I'd given her during my last visit to the store. She'd gotten the position and credited her confidence in part to feeling powerful in her new clothes. I smiled at the synchronicity. Exactly 1 year ago, I'd been helping another woman prepare for her interview when my own life imploded. Now, I was helping others build their confidence while standing firmly in my own power. Life has a fascinating way of bringing us full circle, though rarely in the way we expect. That devastating text message, "I'm leaving you. I emptied our account. Have fun," was meant to destroy me, to leave me helpless and desperate. Instead, it became the catalyst for my renaissance. When I think about how close I came to accepting less than I deserved, it sends a chill down my spine. But that's the beautiful thing about our lowest moments. They often contain the seeds of our greatest transformations, if we're brave enough to nurture them. The woman I've become wouldn't recognize the woman who once smiled through dinner parties while being belittled by her husband. And for that evolution, I am profoundly grateful. What would your life look like if you stopped dimming your light for someone else's comfort? What dreams have you set aside to accommodate others' expectations? The most valuable lesson I learned through my experience was that preparation meets opportunity in unexpected ways. The small steps I took to protect myself, separate accounts, documented evidence, professional development, seemed insignificant at the time. But together, they created a foundation strong enough to support an entirely new life when my old one collapsed. Your preparation might look different, but the principle remains the same. Build your safety net before you need it, because by the time you realize you're falling, it may be too late. The revenge fantasies I entertained during those dark early days faded quickly, as I discovered something far more satisfying than making John pay for his betrayal. building a life so fulfilling that his absence became irrelevant. True power isn't found in punishing those who hurt us, but in creating something beautiful from the wreckage they leave behind. The ultimate revenge is showing yourself what you're capable of when you're no longer holding back to preserve someone else's ego. My perfect payback wasn't orchestrating John's downfall. It was rising so high that the life he took from me pales in comparison to the one I've created for myself. So, what will you do with the challenges life presents you? Will you let them define you? Or will you use them as stepping stones to something greater? Your story isn't over when someone else tries to write your ending. That's just when you pick up the pen and start a new chapter. If something in this story resonated with you, I invite you to take one small step today toward building your own safety net or reclaiming a dream you've set aside. Subscribe to this channel and activate notifications so we can continue this journey together. Remember, the text message that's meant to end your story might actually be the introduction to the life you were always meant to live. Are you ready to write that next chapter?